I've already decided on our cold open this week. Do you remember? It might have been the first episode where OT made like a flippant comment saying that like he didn't want to be racist or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, basically,
the Uruk-hai captain and how you could convert him because all Uruk-hai look the same.
Oh,
yeah. Well, basically, the cold open is going to be me saying, "Should we talk about the Rings of Power?" And then I'm just going to cut and just edit in OT going, "I don't mean to be racist, but," and then music will play. So we sorted the cold open, and I shafted OT, which is beautiful.
Never say anything that could be taken out of context.
Yeah. Good morning and welcome to the Hobby Rep Show, kicking off your mornings with wargaming chat. As always, your hosts are this morning me, Onod. We've got OT.
Good morning, everybody.
And we have the Mayor.
Good morning, everyone.
Fantastic. And on today's show, or this week's show rather, we are going to be going through the news. There's a little bit of pre-order stuff we're going to be talking about, and we might talk about Rings of Power, maybe. Hobby, and then the main topic we're going to be talking about is Army of the South and Riders of Theoden. So we'll be back in just a moment. Brilliant. And the news this week, kickstarting things off. Let's talk about Rings of Power very quickly. We'll set like a 5-minute timer, which we won't stick to. Any thoughts?
It's fine, and it's like fine. I think actually it being fine is quite good because like I was quite worried that it was going to be awful and I was going to hate it. But the fact that I don't hate it, like we've talked about it, there's things I think all of us don't like about it necessarily, but then there are also some really good bits as well. And like one thing you can't take away from it is it does look phenomenal. Like they've clearly thrown a lot of money at it.
Nice. Yeah,
and like Khazad-dûm's really well realized.
I actually love the second episode. Like you were saying, the first episode I was like, this is fine. This is okay. The second episode I was like, I fucking love the dwarves. I don't know. They're just I thought it was quite well written.
I think the dwarves have been especially well done. I almost feel like that's because they realised that a lot of the dwarves in The Hobbit people didn't really like, so they might have put more effort into how they look. Like they look very dwarven. Like they've like fucking gone for the beards, haven't they?
The beards. The beards. I was like, they're like below the waist beards.
It's good.
Really good.
It's good. That's what everyone wanted. Whilst what we got was like Thorin's he's very nice beards. Like he's clearly been going to the Turkish barbers, but
yeah,
it just wasn't I think what a lot of people imagined. I think the elves are quite good.
Yep.
We all like young Ned Stark.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good.
It's good.
Yeah,
good to see. I just think it's too early to cast judgment yet. I mean, I know lots of people on the internet are being pricks and are trying to, but like you need to wait because they've commissioned 5 seasons, they've chucked 4 billion at it or whatever it is. Like, give it time. Like, I think these early episodes, if it's all like this, I'm okay with that. Like, it's better than The Hobbit was.
And there haven't been any huge like lore issues. No. I think the only one that you pointed out earlier was that Durin's dad's called Durin, which doesn't really make sense because.
Well, there is like in the tree. There's quite a lot of Durins following Durins.
There are, but Durin is reincarnated every now and again. So to have 2 alive at the same time doesn't make sense.
But it's some of them I think are just called Durin, and some of them they treat as reincarnations. Is that
not for the kings? No.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter too much. I think that will just be because they're not going to ever speak about reincarnation, so there's no point really bothering about it there, and it just simplifies things.
I think like I want to watch more. and I think that's really
Yeah,
good. I want to watch the next episode. I left
looking
Desolation Smaug being like, I don't really want to see 5
I almost rewatched the second episode straight away. I was just like, I really love that.
I have watched both episodes twice.
Oh, well, yeah.
I've watched them through.
Okay, wow. I need to get with the times then.
I'm like going like full like when Game of Thrones was at like its peak power, where I used to like watch every episode a couple of times. I'd watch it once through and then I'd leave it while I watch it back just to see if there's anything I missed. But yeah, no, it's good. I'm enjoying it. I think the only thing is I really hope that guy's not Gandalf.
Yeah,
I think that will kind of.
Like I wouldn't mind so much if I'm not super hot on the lore, so this might trigger people. Like I'm not that bothered if he yeah. Oh, here we go again. I don't mean to be racist, but no, not when we're talking about this.
Why are you saying it again? Cut.
But like I don't mind so much if he's a wizard. Like I'm not bothered about that, but he shouldn't be Gandalf. Like let's do something else for a bit. Like,
maybe he'll be one of the blue wizards or something.
Yeah. But
yeah,
I mean that's a little sketchy lore-wise.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about that because I saw like someone suggesting it could be a blue wizard in like an article, and them pointing out that it might be that like Tolkien never actually specified when the blue wizards arrived. But then also there are two that go around together, and it kind of is inferred that they arrive in the third age. But I mean, I wouldn't be as mad about that because that doesn't really ruin anything because they are kind of just name dropped and then have no influence. Whilst if it would be Gandalf, that obviously significantly changes his character and everything. But anyway, yeah, looking forward to seeing it. I think once all of the episodes are out, we might discuss it in more detail once we've actually, seen it all, and we're not just speculating on a quarter of a show. So yeah, other news, more interesting news. Well, I don't know if it's more interesting. More interesting if you're a colossal nerd, perhaps. Like we are,
all those
colossal nerds not listening to this.
Listening to Rings of Power.
Who's not a colossal nerd who's listening? Come on, Onod, who are you?
Yeah, comment below if you're not a colossal nerd. That's why we get no comments. But anyway, so the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth strategy battle game, we don't include the Hobbit in its name, is being released for the pre-order window. So the starter box is getting a 2-week pre-order window starting next week, but it's not going to be out until December. They haven't said when. I'm assuming that this is to do with shipping and getting the books and the scenery and the models together to put in the same box, and because the world is a horrible place, they're just struggling to get all of that together. So they're kind of going, let's see how many we need, and then we can get them to you before Christmas, so that they've got it all organized.
Well, so if they're using the pre-orders to determine how many things they need, they're going to need a lot more than 2 weeks, because shipping from China takes at least a month to 3 months to actually ship.
I imagine that it's more a kind of case of knowing how many to reorder, if that makes sense.
Well, they must have quite a lot of stock if they're allowing pre-orders. So close.
Yeah, you'd thought so, wouldn't you? Although, I guess it is a couple of months. I don't know exactly. They might have just kind of wanting to know so that they know how many to ship to America and stuff. I don't know. But but in other exciting news, there's going to be stuff here sooner than that, because they're releasing the other stuff under just the regular pre-order. So the Battle Hosts, the Rohan, Mordor, Isengard, and Minas Tirith Battle Hosts are going to be up for pre-order, which is cool. And I assume that also means that we're getting the free rules that are going to be posted alongside them relatively soon. It'll be interesting to take a look at those and see what they mean by free rules. I don't know if they're going to give
more
us
than 3 pages.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to give us a kill team kind of version of the rules in 3 pages. I feel like you can't condense Middle-earth into 3 pages because whilst it's quite a simple game,
just watch them.
Yeah, maybe.
You have to play with no scenery. But, I mean, that would take out a good chunk of it.
It would.
No magic users, no heroes.
Well,
just
they'll have
special rules.
They'll have to have magic users because they're putting Gandalf and Saruman and the Witch King in 3 boxes. Yeah. Only 1 box doesn't come with magic user. But anyway, we'll see. Elrond is up for pre-order. OT, you're excited about that, aren't you?
I'm so excited. Like, I'm looking at the page now, and I'm hoping I'll be able to get. I'm hoping I'll be able to get him and the dice. I mean, this is how they get you, isn't it? I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. I'm a bit of a tangent here, but on Instagram, you get lots of targeted ads, and I used to think that I was way smarter than people who got suckered into the targeted ads and stuff. No. And then a couple of months ago, the algorithm honed in on me, and since then, I don't know how much money I've spent, but it's ridiculous. And the
algorithm he's a mega nerd.
Yeah, and it got me. And I'm buying t-shirts and stuff I don't even need, and now they're
laser pinpoint.
And GW have done this. I didn't want to build a Rivendell list, but now I've ordered a box of Rivendell Knights. I'm going to buy Glorfindel and Elrond, and it's ridiculous.
Suck it in.
I've been mugged off completely. But
anyway,
I'm excited.
He looks very nice. Plastic model looks good. They're randomly. It does come to Barbara. They're randomly re-releasing the old Osgiliath ruins and the Scatter Terrain set as a combined Ruins of Middle-earth, which is nice because I was kind of thinking that we'd never see that again now they have the new ruins. But no, they're going, we'll just have both. That's good. I'm assuming that will kind of be reasonably cheap because they're not the freshest kit.
Possibly similar to Rivendell Gandalf. It's just a box they found somewhere at the back of the factory and they've hauled it out.
Maybe. Lovely Rivendell dice. Rivendell dice are a very, very nice colour.
Yeah.
Gotta say, those are maybe the nicest dice GW made. Yeah.
The Rohan ones are nice.
A long time. I think the Lord of the Rings dice are much nicer than the other ones they make. Some of the ones they make for Warhammer look shit.
Yeah.
But these are very nice and readable too. There's some Dale dice, which again look very nice. They're that kind of bronzy colour and again, nice, clear to read. So both of those look nice. I imagine they'll be going very quickly. We're getting a made to order for the little Witch King diorama with Eowyn, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a piece you can play with because I don't think they. Well, it says they do come with 3 bases, so I guess you could have Eowyn in just a really weird pose.
Yeah,
but I think most people are.
Yeah, Merry is definitely that's an unusual Merry pose.
Yeah, kind of squat down. But, so lots of stuff coming. It's always good to see. There's some other stuff.
There's some Kill Team Into the Darks being put on pre-order, which is quite cool.
We talked about that last month.
Well, now the miniatures have been released, and you can also buy the Lucidian Star Striders and the Galapox Infected, and a bunch of other kill teams that you could have only got in a combined starter box beforehand, including some terrain sets, and they've also released the annual 2022 kill team kind of book with all the stuff that came out this year, including obviously the old Galapox Infected and the Star Striders.
True.
So I've ordered that book.
Next month's White Dwarf is going to have 40 pages on Kill Team and Warcry.
Wow. 40 pages.
Immediately outdating the annual. always good to see that material for next year's annual immediately being published. I don't think there's any other news we were especially interested in. There's not much. I will just briefly mention I saw that the Warlords games Open Day this weekend. Apparently, I've heard reports that their Epic range, which I think I've mentioned to you guys before, has been doing well, and they're going to be expanding it. So there might be Romans.
Okay.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Which I'll be interested in, because plastic. I think they're like 12 mil scale, kind of. They're like small 15 or whatever, but they're so cheap. Like you get so much value out of those. And basically, the only reason I haven't got them is because I don't really care that much about the Napoleonic Wars, or at least not the. I like the ships at that time. I'm not that interested in the land armies though. And American Civil War, which I think might be the most boring war I could think of. I think
so
if
we'll
I
avoid
was
that one then.
Wow.
Yeah, I think if I was going to invent a war that would be as boring as possible to me, it would be the American Civil War.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, not going to do that one either. We just lost our American audience. It's going to be slowly destroying any potential listeners. We've now lost listeners in China, America, and anyone who's not a mega nerd.
Yeah,
it's just the Russians left.
It's just the Russians left.
Yeah. But we need them to 3D print our models.
Yeah, it's true. You guys need to order your miniatures from Russia. It's true. Allegedly. Your friend.
Yeah.
Peter.
Well, I didn't know we were friends, but it's nice that it's official.
Friends tax reason.
He's added you on Facebook.
I hope not.
Should we do some hobby news? Not news.
Let's
Hobby
move
things.
on. So hobby chat. I'm going to start hobby chat this week. I've painted Gandalf this week. Wow, there it is.
Which Gandalf?
Plastic Gandalf. Plastic Gandalf from the Fellowship of the Ring box, not from the film that shall not be named box.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Floaty Gandalf.
Floaty Gandalf. Yeah, I discovered when I was about. I'm glad I dry tested it. When I was about to glue old plastic Gandalf, who must be 20 years old at this point, if you glue him with the tab, his feet don't touch the ground.
Wow.
So the tab is like in the middle of him, and his base is just cast as 1 foot sticking out, and then everything's just a kind of blob underneath the cloak. It's like they haven't sculpted any detail in there, which I mean, fair enough. Why would you 20 years ago sculpt that? Is who really gives a shit? But because the tab is in the middle of this blob, the foot ends up significantly off the ground. So I ended up removing the tab and then just sticking him to a non-slotted base. But yes, if anyone ever buys that kit, do not just slap some glue on Gandalf's tab and hope it'll be okay. Because it will not be. But yeah, I quite enjoy painting him. He's a nice, straightforward model because he's basically one color. Like, there's not masses to do, and even his detail is like he's wearing a belt. he has hands. So yeah, it's nice.
Good things.
Once again, I just time escaped me this week, so I didn't really have much time. I'm finally possibly going to have a free weekend though, so I might actually have something more.
Have you painted the wall?
No.
Wow.
I've basically just been aiming to survive work last week.
Okay. Wow.
And that was the main focus of my energy, and watching Rings of Power twice.
Yeah.
that probably also consumed more time than it needed to.
Yeah.
That concludes my hobby chat. Yeah, I'm hoping to get back to doing a bit of bows and badgers, and I might start making some hobbits, but I'll talk about that more when I actually have.
Did you see the mouse game I sent you?
The mouse game?
I'll tell you no then. Well, you and...
Is that a board game?
It was a board game, yeah. While you and OT were chatting in the chat, I sent in the middle of it some. It's like a bit like Burrows and Badgers, but
I don't remember this. Have you invented this? Did you have like a fever dream or something?
no, it looks really fun.
I know you sent us the link to that Pirates of the Caribbean game. Which is it actually Pirates of the Caribbean, or is it just similar?
No, it's just Pirates. It's just the boarding.
But it's literally what OT described a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah, although they probably butchered it, and it's obviously not
possibly
with the IP. But anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. That's the only thing I remember you saying. A mouse game. Good. Does it have models?
Yeah, they're like little Mouseketeer looking.
Oh, okay.
Dudes.
How do you know how big they are? They're 28 mil.
I have no idea. They're probably heroic. Yeah.
Yeah, probably too big for those budgets.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Resend me the link. Let's go that way. Matt, what have you been up to then? In your hobbies, have you been doing more Tau?
I've been painting more Tau. I've got a game lined up for Tuesday against my friends. I also bought something else Kill Team related that's not the book, but I won't say it because I know that my friend listens, and I'm not going to spoil what I bought.
Is it a new team?
There's no spoilers here, but is. It might be.
I hope it's like a measuring cord. I hope it's really fucking boring.
Yeah. No,
I bought a new dice set. Yeah.
I'm hoping to surprise him. So at some point, because I basically only play my Tau at the moment, he'll be expecting to play my Tau, and I'll whip out this new army, fully painted. Yeah, and he'll be like, "Oh shit!" And hopefully we'll have a really good game. Could be anything.
I swear I read that there were like 30 factions in Kill Team or something.
Well, I think he might know what it is, to be fair. But I do quite like that Kill Team's small enough that, a bit like Lord of the Rings, it doesn't take much to learn about your opposition's faction. Whereas like in proper 40k, there's like just too much to know about. Whereas in Kill Team, it's not as dissimilar to Middle-earth SPG. You can just kind of learn what your opponent does really quickly and not have to be like, that guy has like 5 weapon profiles and you have how many of them? And then another unit, etc.
It's the like stacking special rules in 40k is the issue.
Yeah, it's like all just a bit much.
If you play a Space Marine army, you have to remember their Space Marine special rules, their combat doctrine, what chapter they're in, what you then selected.
Yeah. I mean, in Kill Team, there is quite a lot of it. Like, if you want there to be extra bullshit stuff to remember, there is. Or you can play a really simple faction and kind of leave the extra bullshit. But, so just a bit of Kill Team stuff. The pre-order, looking at Middle-earth SPG tournament potentially December. That looks quite interesting. Apart from that, not very much. So... Yes,
and
more
nicely segueing us in because I think OT is looking at that tournament as well. What have you been up to, OT? Once again, you are lifting the hobby section above your head, yeeting it into relevance.
The fires of Mount Doom. So I finished the Angmar list, which was 6 guys with shields and the Barrow White, and then I did my Dwarf Ballista. I always wanted a Dwarf Ballista for ages. I don't really know why, because I don't actually know how good they are. I've never used one, but painted that up. Took me about most of the day to do that one. I've got a few leftover High Elf Rivendell Warriors, and I'm just trying some different colours on them for when the Rivendell Knights arrive, because I think the Rivendell Knights going to be quite a project. That's more or less the plan. But I'm gonna slow down lower my quantity and hopefully raise the quality. Is the plan going forward.
Very good, very good. Right. I think we'll have a quick break and then we will be on to our main topic. Right, so we're going to start off with Army of the South or the other one, Rise of Theoden. Good, conclusion.
We could get right. I think Riders of Theoden is going to be a lot more
Riders
straightforward.
Riders of Theoden.
Yeah.
OT, take us through the most OP legendary legion.
It's not OP.
Previously the most OP.
Yeah,
it was
previously most
okay.
OP.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Go on.
Yeah, so it's all mounted Rohan, which is probably how you're taking them anyway. You just get some nice buffs for taking it at a particular time in the movies. So you get Theoden with all his stuff. You have to take armored horse. Aomer, again, all his stuff. So basically, all the equipment comes and they all come mounted. If they can take armored horse, they have to take armored horse. You get Dernhelm, Daewine, Gamling, Elfhelm, Captain of Rohan, Riders of Rohan, and Rohan Royal Guard. Theoden has to be in your force, and he has to be the army's leader. Makes sense because of the name. Dernhelm, who's one of the new heroes who was introduced in the book, combination of Eowyn and Merry, can be deployed as part of Elfhelm's warband or by themselves. They're a minor hero if they're by themselves. You keep the normal army bonus, which is +1 strength on the charge, and then once per game you get death, which is quite strong. Basically, if Theoden's alive on the battlefield, he can declare that he's using this, and every Rohan hero within 12 inches gets either a heroic combat or a heroic strike without expending any might.
Which is
Strong.
pretty good.
Yeah. Pretty good.
It's also obligatory for you to start just shouting death.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't work otherwise.
Essentially, you get the usual +1 for charging, but for the restrictions of the Legion, you get the death special rule, which is really good. You don't need to take that many guys for this to work really well. As soon as you get into combat, you probably want like a 1-to-4 ratio of heroes to warriors. If that, you could get away with less.
We should probably mention the FAQ as well, actually.
For the banner.
For the banner, yeah.
So Gamling's banner used to work where you could give a free might point to anyone who doesn't have any might points at the beginning of the turn, but they FAQ'd it so you can only do it to one hero. So essentially, it's worse, but it's still really good, and you're always taking it.
But the issue that they had with this was basically people used to just like spam all the good heroes available, and then just kind of create this kind of disgusting monster that just plowed through whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, because you could just call so many heroics.
Yeah. On one hand, you still only have one might per turn, which anyone who's using Aragorn, like basically everyone is Aragorn, but is always on one. So you either do one thing or the other with it, and then you can't use it to modify, your dice rolls or something else. So it had its ups and downs, but yes, essentially it was a bit too strong. So nerf came in, and it's still pretty strong.
It's still good. If you are playing this and you want to win, this list is going to enable you to do that. It just requires a bit more thought than it used to because of that nerf. Shall we quickly run through Army of the South then before we start discussing both of them? So, Mayor, do you want to take us through Army of the South and what that entails? Okay,
so I'll start with one of the limitations. This Legendary Legion goes over 4 pages. So, admittedly, one of those is just the designer's notes and one is the front page. But regardless, so you either have to take Suladan or the Mummock War Leader. You can have both if you wish. The other restriction to bear in mind is that it needs to include at least one Mummock model, which I believe counts as your Mummock War Leader if you were to take him. So unless so it's either Suladan with a Mummock or Mummock War Leader. It's the restriction there. Also, only Muhud heroes can lead Muhud warriors, and 50% of the models must have the Haradrim keyword, so you can't just like spam Muhud warriors. So the army composition is Suladan. You can take armored horse or bow with poison arrows. Raza, Haradrim kings, Haradrim chieftains, Hasharin, Warmamuk of Harad, the Haradrim taskmaster, Haradrim warriors, Haradrim raiders, Serpent guard, Serpent riders, the Mumuk war leader, obviously, and then Muhud king, Muhud tribes master, Warmamuk of Far Harads, Muhud warriors, Muhud raiders, and half trolls. So that's obviously quite an extensive list. And as far as I can tell, the main things that you don't get in there are the Golden King. You also don't get the Merchant Guard that kind of associated with him, or Watchers of Kana. You don't get those either. But of course, you do get the half trolls, which are really strong. So, of the things you want, you've got pretty much everything. Because if you weren't taking the fatties, as we call them, then you'll be taking half trolls anyway. And that's the list.
Fat shaming there.
You obviously have some special rules as well, which I just mentioned. So you can take 50% bow limits. You also have your army's leader may declare a free heroic action at the start of any fight phase in which they're engaged in combat with the enemy leader. So a little bit situational. If the Mumuk war leader is your leader, you may still use the ability while atop his royal war Mumuk, in which case the Mumuk will be affected as if it had been the one to declare the heroic action, which is quite good because a lot of the time your enemy's leader is going to be the strongest model. If your enemy has Aragorn as a leader or something, then you're probably going to want to use Aragorn to take down the Mumuk, but this incentivizes that you be a bit careful about that. So War Beasts of the South, all Mumuk models in your force get the Harbinger of Evil special rule, which is a 12-inch -1 courage debuff, which is really nice. And Warrior Pride, Muhud warrior models that are within 6 inches of friendly Muhud hero models that is engaged in combat automatically pass all courage tests they're required to make. So if you just had a bunch of Muhud warriors, they all basically get fearless and can charge whatever they want if they're in range of heroes in combat. So quite a nice array of buffs. I believe the default buff for the army bonus is the 50% bow limit. So
you keep both army bonuses. So the Mahud one is the courage test thing, and then the Harad one is the 50% bows. So you get both.
So you've got the extra heroic action if your leaders in combat with theirs, and the Harbinger of Evil for Mumuks then are the main bonuses then. And considering you're not losing anything really, apart from having to take the Muhud war leader or Suladan as a restriction, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good upgrade.
Yeah, and I guess the interesting thing is Harad and Far Harad are historical allies anyway, aren't they?
So you get their army bonuses.
You get their army bonuses anyway. So I guess we can discuss that a little bit later on as to when we're saying if it's worth taking it. A lot of the bonuses are just the regular army rules, which is kind of, to me, is that really seen in any? I can't really think of any other legendary legions which are basically so similar. Anyway, we'll get on to that later. If we start off, Riders of Theoden, it's very themey. I think both of them are very themey, actually. They both do the theme job very well. Rise of Theoden is a really cool kind of like moment in the movies, and I think unlike like what we were talking about with like an army like Men of the West, this one feels like they actually gave it something, and that you can play it how you want to play it. But it's a lot more how you'd imagine something like that working, or at least that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think the special rule is like super cool. It's very themey. It's very good. Whether the army is limited enough on like forces. I'm not really sure. I mean, there's not a lot you can do in terms of making it different or more limited, because you pretty much got the bare bones of who was there. So I can't see much wrong with it. What do you think, OT? I feel like he's got a problem with it, and I don't know what it is. And I'm waiting to put it down, because I really think it's a strong Legion.
But hates everything, especially Rings of Power.
I'm an extremely bitter person.
Have you played against this one?
I don't know.
Do you have history with it or something?
I'm gonna climb up a hill here, and you two are gonna think it's a stupid hill, but it is a hill I will climb nonetheless.
Go on then.
So, theme-wise, and like, I think it's one of the best Legions that exists theme-wise. I don't think there's a whole lot I would change about it at all. It's got all the characters you need. The death rule is really cool, like incentivizes you to get in there. And I think this is almost what was missing when we talked about Men of the West last week. Like, there isn't that incentive to do what happened, and death forces you to play that way. I think it's quite a high skill list if you want to play it really, really well. Like, I think if you want to take full advantage of all that might and all those heroes, especially post nerf, I think like a really good player is going to play really well with this. But I think, like, I don't play a lot of cavalry, and I think if I were to take this, I wouldn't actually do that well. I think it would still be powerful, but I think it's quite difficult to take advantage of it. The problem I have is how much it costs to build this list optimally. And I think it's for that reason that I couldn't recommend to somebody that they build this Legion.
Not to a new player, at least.
Not to a new player, because like, if you're paying, the problem is, even if you take Riders of Rohan, it still ends up being quite expensive. But what you want a Royal Guard, a mounted Royal Guard, are £12 a model, which is really, really expensive. And like, genuinely, I couldn't find a way to make this list, even like not optimally. Like, I put Riders of Rohan in, not Royal Guard. I could barely get it below 100 quid for 400 points. And like, if you want to run it optimally at 650, it could be nearly 300 quid if you're buying direct from GW. Like, it's so expensive. But like, the actual Legion is fantastic. It's got all the characters, like really reminiscent of the movie. It'd be super fun. So yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the, I feel like perks, Miller, is that the cost to get in isn't as high as a lot of King Virtual games.
Yeah.
This one actually is strangely kind of getting on towards those kind of like 40k prices for builds.
Yeah.
An army. And I mean, when what you're buying is essentially not that much even in terms of quantity. And I mean, when you compare it to a normal Rohan force, if you're building a normal Rohan force, you're probably getting a couple of big heroes. You're building a mix of cav, but you aren't necessarily always incentivized to like get like so many of the like heroes and like get such a kind of expensive thing. But I think ultimately Rohan is probably always going to be a little more expensive, just because you do want to run cavalry most of the time.
But it's mounted heroes that are the problem. Like, they are just expensive. Like, that's not even like financially. I don't think I'm not saying GW are doing anything wrong, but like, mounted models just are more expensive. And I think this list almost is its own worst.
You say that. They're not really, though, are they? It's like an inflated cost they've placed on it.
I get it. Like I'm willing to pay more for like a mounted hero than a normal hero. But I think like this list, the problem it causes is because the points wise, the troops are actually relatively affordable. You have to buy a lot of them because you can fit a lot of them in. Like, Royal Guard on horse is only 15 points and you're paying 12 quid. Like, it's a lot.
It's almost 1 point per pound.
It really is, and like that's.
It probably is. Probably is 1 point per dollar, isn't it?
Yeah.
The American.
And, yeah. But it's really good, and like theme wise, gameplay wise, it's great, and it's just a shame it costs too much.
Yeah, and I guess if you are going to build this, eBay or whatever is your friend.
Yeah.
You know,
Russian
looking
friends.
but looking for like you're going to be able to probably pick up the old AMR sculpt, the less than the plastic one, because whilst he is out of production, he wasn't really like a very rare miniature. You're probably going to be able to pick up a cheaper Theoden on eBay. You probably could pick up a cheaper Eowyn. It's just how much you want it to be like, you know, official.
Well, especially if you're taking Dernhelm, it gets a bit fiddly, doesn't it?
Yeah, but there are ways to pick these miniatures up a bit cheaper. But yeah, it's not going to be the easiest one to get into. On the flip side, though, Army of the South, whilst you're on the topic of price, weirdly ends up being
really good.
kind of affordable. You'd think when you're told, oh, by the way, you have to buy a Mummock,
a big elephant.
Like, oh, okay, so I'm going to have to invest. But the Mummock ends up being pretty
bargain,
relatively effective.
Yeah. Well, so especially if you buy the War Leader from Forge World, it's 70 quid for 400 points, and like that. I mean, it's not a whole army, but it gets you a lot of the way there.
It comes with a sprue of Haradrim warriors, I believe.
Yep. Who you're probably taking anyway.
In the Howder. So it actually ends up being pretty good value because you get 400 points straight away, £75, plus you get some warriors. And then really, because you've got to take the Mummock, you are probably looking at just adding bits and pieces on the higher points.
Yeah.
That's definitely something in that favour. Fluff-wise, like the lore, Army of the South is, you know, it's quite fun. I mean, it's a cool scene in the movie. I feel like, obviously, because they're the bad guys, the Riders of Theoden, it's a bit cooler.
Yeah.
But if you are so inclined to play the Forces of Evil, then, you know, it's pretty themey. Nothing especially wrong with it. I don't think it's quite as fun rules wise though.
No.
It's not bad. It's just a bit deflating when you realise that most of those special rules are just the ones that they got anyway.
And their Green Alliance, like it's not as compelling a legion to run in the way that like Rise of Theoden is, just because of death by itself.
It's like, a very practical legion. It's like if you're gonna take a Mummock, you're probably gonna take this legion. But if you're not gonna take a Mummock, then you don't really miss out on anything at all, and you can take Green Alliance. So it's a kind of, you're not really going to run it because you really, really love this scene. You're going to run it just because you're running a Mummock and you're like, oh, well, I might as well have an extra special rule then. Yeah. And if you're not running a Mummock, you're not going to be like devastated that you're missing out on like a cool, different way to play Harrods, because taking a Mummock was already the different way of playing it, because it's such a different kind of like miniature rules wise in the system. And I don't know how you address that though, because it's kind of like you don't want to pile on too many rules, because I think it would be quite difficult to balance. But I don't know.
So what sort of lists do you have, OT? What do you want to give us a rundown?
For both of them, or Army of the South? Okay. So my 400 point list was Theoden, Dernhelm, Daewine, and 10 Riders of Rohan. I'd prefer to put in Royal Guard, but this one was made to be as sort of affordable as you could. And that's just 2 boxes of Riders of Rohan, so it's quite efficient. And
how much is fine.
That came to £110.
And where does that rank on your other 400 lists? Just a bit over.
It's the most expensive. It's over the average by about 50 quid. The average is about 70 to 75. And then it gets quite ugly at 650. So the army I'd like to run is similar. I think you have to take Theoden. I think you nearly always take Dernhelm because I think it's a really good choice. I think I really like Daewine. I think actually he looks really powerful. I
think you probably take him before you take Elfhelm for sure.
It's weird. Like I never think about Aemir in these lists, and I don't know why.
No,
I think it may just be he's a chunk more expensive. Like
he's actually probably the 4th or 5th hero you take.
Yeah, despite being really, really good, like really solid, but he just doesn't do anything like special. And then I would take Gambling at 650 just because I think at 400 he probably doesn't pay off as well. Whereas at 650, I think you have to take him, even if he's like not the most effective in combat. And then basically you just fill the rest with a combination of Rides of Rohan and Royal Guard. I think the meta seems to be you put throwing spears on them.
Yeah,
that's up to you. Yeah, but I put throwing spears on. And so that list came to £260.
Wow,
which is a lot.
Which is a lot of money. Like the cheapest 650 list I can make that was decent was 180, which isn't catastrophic, but it's pretty bad. If you want to put all Royal Guard in and no Rides of Rohan, it pushes up towards like 300 quid. Like 9 Royal Guard costs £110.
Well, I was really hoping to take this list to the Christmas tournaments.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have some of the models, but I think actually I don't have any of the hero models I'd need to take, and they're probably the most expensive part, aren't they?
I think the one good thing is because those heroes are new, you can get them, all of them but Theoden discounted at places like Element or Wayland. But they're still fairly pricey. Yeah.
I mean, it's nearly double the cost of the average of the other legions. Like, it's not a million miles away.
It'll be interesting when we get round, because Rohan get a lot of legendary legions, as
they do. Yeah.
Everyone has noticed. It'll be interesting to compare the pricing of this one to the others, because I know I can think on top of my head, for example, one that is similar to this, but just ends up being a lot cheaper to buy, just because of how it's built. But obviously, we'll come to that in a future. So, and then Army of the South. I'm assuming that at 400 points, it's
well, you have a choice. It's either the Mummic War Leader and nothing else at 400 points, or you take Suladan and the Mummic, and you have 5 points left over, I think, or like 25 points left over. And
War Leader, I reckon.
Yeah.
They're a Mummic upgrade for 5 points.
There's a bunch of them. You could take the Mahud Beastmaster and things like that.
That's 5 points though.
It's 25 for the Beastmaster. I think Suladan's 100. So yeah, or you could. I mean, you put them on your horse, but yeah, I don't think that's the thing.
One is 10.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't be very useful.
Rattling lines.
Heartbreak.
Yeah. And then at 650, you've got some choices. Like I would again take the War Leader just because I think it's quite cool. And then I'd use the Sprue with the Harrowed Warriors with the bows in the Howdah, and then personally I'd just take a chieftain on a horse with some Harrowed Cav or something like that. I think you want to be fairly fast moving. Like one thing I've said in my notes on this Legion is that when you're building this list, because you don't have a choice about effectively 400 points, a lot of the lists you're going to make, especially at lower points, are going to end up looking really, really similar. Because like with all the legions, you have a certain amount of points that are like locked away. Like we said with Rangers of Ithilien, like you have that 140, 150 point Hobbit tax. And Faramir as well. So that's like 230 points you don't get a choice over. It's the same with this, like basically 400 points you just have to take. And then you just put in stuff around it if you can fit it in. But cost for that one, basically at 400 points, it's roughly 65, 70 quid about average. And then as you move up, it's probably about 120, 130 quid for a 650 point list, maybe a little bit cheaper. So yeah, it's pretty much bang on average for both of those.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's an interesting comparison then. It's like you've got one that's got the awesome rules, but is prohibitively expensive, I think, for a new player, and then one which is kind of like, but then it's actually pretty reasonable to get into, and especially if you like, some people just love like having like big centerpiece models.
If you're hyped for the Mummock,
it's
the way to run it. If you want to take like a Mummock, then take this list. You'll struggle to do well, but like at the same time, it's a lot for anybody.
You'll be swinging. You'll be swinging. If the Mummock rolls well, you'll do it right.
Yeah.
And if the Mummock rolls poorly, then probably won't. If the Mummock tries to walk over a defense 9 dwarf, it can't step over that.
Slightly awkward. No,
that dwarf is fucking impossible to step over. Wants to step over like a massive. So anyway, if we were to make changes, then would we change anything? Because Rise of Theoden is. I don't think you want to change it.
No, I think it's pretty good as it is.
But then we've just discussed how expensive it is.
Yeah.
Would we like to see a way of running it more cheaply without drastically?
GW to sell plastic.
Plastic.
Get on that. Or just bring the price down. We were discussing this, weren't we, the other day, because we've between us owned. I think we've all owned Royal Guard, haven't we? So on horse, when you buy a Royal Guard on horse, the horse is plastic, and three Royal Guard on foot is it £12 at the moment?
Yeah.
So you are paying £24 for three plastic horses.
It's disgusting.
Because the size of Royal Guard on horse is no different. There's no more metal.
Do you know something?
It's a lot of money for some plastic horses.
Yeah. Something I spotted is half trolls, which are 23 points each, are £5 a model.
Wow.
Like it I don't understand.
They don't point it based on that though.
It's so bad.
I don't know how they price it. It seems to change between. I assume that it depends on how many they think they're going to sell and how well they think that something's going to sell and all of that, as well as kind of just sheer product that's used. But it's a weird one, isn't it? But the metal cavalry models probably are a bit overpriced, and I think that Royal Guard just been unfortunately lumped in with it's a metal cavalry model, but they haven't really thought that we're selling you a plastic horse.
Well, because when I was looking at Riv Knights, I had put it on the chat, didn't I? That like a box of them is 30 quid, and you get 6 times 22. It's like 140 points pretty much, plus a banner, and like you could even take a captain with them. Like it's around. It can be up to like 200 points. Whereas for the Royal Guard, you're paying, as we said, it's very nearly like $1 per point. Like it's not good. It's not a good deal.
£10 for 3 Royal Guards on foot.
Yeah.
But I mean, the weird thing is, a complete metal cavalry model, the Rider of the Dead, is £10.
Yeah.
The pricing is
a bit much.
Whack.
I would give this army a slight buff just to be themey.
Oh.
Would you replace it with something, or are you just adding?
It's literally just an extra
rule.
You're
adding a buff.
I would call it Bring It Down, and I would let this army re-roll wounds against monsters.
For a turn, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think if
it was
Theoden has to
cool.
call it, that could be really interesting because that's what he does in the film, right?
Yeah. Well, just
I think
something
that'd be
because,
cool.
like, I think, I just quite like the idea because I was thinking about because we paired these together. Like, I thought that would just be because it's a fairly niche thing. I think, like, rerolling hits against wounds against monsters. So yeah, that would just be the only thing I'd add. But apart from that, it's spot on. You don't know anything else.
Yeah, I think something that's obviously that's quite themey, but doesn't make it really powerful against everyone, which their other two rules do. So, but then you're going to come against the one guy who's brought just monsters, and he's going to be like, well,
yeah, the Ent armies and the Eagle armies will not be happy.
Yeah.
No.
But apart from that, it's fine. You don't know anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to rate these now or review the Army of the South rules?
Let's go for Army of the South. I don't really like the other ones. I've always had a kind of good kind of like at least like an idea of what I'd do. I really don't know because I think it's so delicate. I feel like you can't really give the moment too much because it's at risk of just breaking the game if you made it too good. I almost feel like to make this Legendary Legion more interesting, you just have to change a rule outside the Legendary Legion and just stop Far Harrod and Harrod being green allies, but then that feels wrong.
Yeah.
But then without doing that, it's like, I don't know. But yeah, it's a tricky one, this one. There's nothing especially wrong with the rules. It's just they're a bit uninspiring. And it's not a case of like Men of the West where we're kind of like, oh, they don't play right because of the rules, or the rules are kind of like so bad that you just kind of it's not worth doing. Like it definitely is worth taking this if you want a monarch.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't quite. It just feels a little bit sometimes, I think.
I had a go at a couple, but I was actually similar to you. I was like, I don't really know what I would change. I would try and link a rule to the Mummock. So like either instead of Mahud warriors get when they're within 6 inches of a Mahud hero, they pass all courage tests. Maybe you just change that to all models in this army when they're within 6 inches of the Mummock. So they're all fearless when they're within 6 inches of the Mummock rather than a Mahud hero. Might be quite a nice thing to change it. I mean, if you really wanted to push linking it to the Mummock, you could turn it into like a banner or something, but then that becomes more problematic because the base is so big. So I think like that might be a bit of a fiddle to sort of balance.
Yeah, I think that will be good. Do you think there's an argument to be made that I don't think it would be too strong if you made the army bonuses apply to both sides of the force?
Yeah, well, it does. So the Grand Army of the South links the 50% bow in it, but then Mahud can't take bows, so it doesn't actually.
So does the Mahud get the poison weapon?
No, so the army actually loses that at all. So they don't get poison. Nobody gets poison weapons. So maybe that could be.
Does the Mahud rule apply to Warriors of Harrod?
No, just Mahud warriors with Mahud heroes.
You see, I don't think that's game breaking. I think just
no.
Say the Mahuds can have poison weapons and the Harrods, and then just say that the Mahud heroes rule works on the Harrod warriors. And I think then at least it's like a reason to take both, and suddenly that actually becomes a more interesting idea. And maybe you need to slightly tweak and say something like you can't take half trolls just to like stop it becoming too strong. But they've given you so many options, it's like you probably could take something out and it wouldn't be devastating. I mean, why they have half trolls who aren't in the movies, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it?
I mean, maybe it was on the grounds of like they didn't think the rules they put in were strong enough, so they gave them half trolls. Maybe it's sort of like a chicken and the egg thing, where like if you made the rules stronger, you could take some of their options away. But I agree.
I think Jay just wants to use his half trolls in this legion.
Maybe. But yeah, I'm. Yeah, I mean,
it's a tricky one There's no like standout rules, are there? Like with the sort of thinking about it now, I've thought about it, and there's nothing really that it's fine. It's nothing problematic.
So yeah, that would be what I do. I just say let them have poison weapons and let them HUD heroes rule apply to Arid warriors because they're in the same force.
Yeah.
And rather than separating the forces out put them together, it's like Men of the West, similar complaint. Why separate the forces out when they're meant to be fighting together? That's such an easy win to instantly give you something in the army building stage, which you don't have if you ally them together, and it gives a more of a purpose by Legendary Legions. And some of them do it, don't they? Some Legendary Legions do it, some of them don't. I feel like because this was the first book that was published, they didn't do that, and then the later books have realised that actually there's no that's kind of.
Because like later ones have come out with the animosity style thing where if there's orcs and urukai or whatever, like you get a bonus. Like there's no reason that couldn't be in this as well. I think that would be a bit strong because it's not very restrictive. But like even if you just did like +1 fight or something.
This is a relatively elite army, so saying you need 2 guys in the same combat, that's not
quite restrictive, especially at lower points. Like at big points. But then it stops you taking lots of mummoks, which is maybe a bit more of a problem.
Are you really taking more than 1 mummok in this list, though?
I don't know. I genuinely have no idea how I would play this. Like, if you gave me this list,
maybe
no idea what I'd do.
Maybe 1,000 points.
Let's live in that world.
Just like a spectacle. Like, if you're doing it just because you really want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, 1,000 points, could you technically take 3 mummoks with just no upgrade?
I mean, you're not a million. Yeah. You could fit the war leader and then 2 with just Beastmaster Chieftain upgrade. 3 mummoks.
Yeah. I think you can probably afford to put some dudes in the Howder as well, can't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you could do that 1,000 points, and that probably is quite fun. But
it's probably very cost effective as well.
Yeah, actually, for 1,000 points.
In terms of
cost of living crisis, we've solved it.
Harmony. Yeah, there you go. 5 mummoks.
So where are we ranking these?
They burn very well at winter.
Yeah.
I think we should rate them.
Yes, good. Stop me talking.
I'm always feeling now that these were not. Whilst these were fun thematically to pair, maybe they weren't good for podcast listening. We seem to have paired 2 where we're like, Army to South, just a very average to me. So very quickly, our 4 tiers, as always, fantastic at the top. So those are ones where we feel like they combine good value for money, good rules, good theme, give you a reason to take it over a regular list. We've then got solid underneath, which we think do most of those things, but maybe miss out on a couple. Then we've got average, where we feel like you might, if you really enjoy a certain list, take it over a regular army, but most of the time you're probably not going to want to run it. And then we've got whiff at the bottom of the list, where we're just kind of like, what are they doing? This needs a complete change, or it just doesn't need to exist. Army of the South is just average. It's like the epitome of average for me. It's like if you were going to create an average Legendary Legion and you just went, let's just take 2 armies, take their normal special rules,
which are still there,
and then which they can do anyway because they're a green ally, and then just throw in 1 extra rule and a slightly different restriction list. It's just so average, isn't it? But if you want to run a mummok,
this is the way to do it.
Well, I mean, Harbinger of Evil is really good.
Yeah.
So, and it's the because you're going to be taking a mummok. I think if they had more than 1 mummok, if they were forcing you to take more than 1, then obviously it wouldn't be much for Legion because you'd only be able to take it at really high points. But
Oliphants of the South.
Yeah.
It's. What else we put in average? We put Gothmogs in average, didn't we?
Gothmogs the only one in average.
I mean, how do we think it compares? Is it above or below that?
I think it's slightly above, personally.
I think rules-wise, it's above, but I think on all other areas, it's the same. I think they both have that idea of it's a nice theme, but you can kind of run it without the Legendary Legion. And whilst Harbinger of Evil's good, I don't think that it's like a massive game changer, is it? Like, it's nice to have, hence why if you're going to run a Mummock, you run the Legendary Legion. But equally, if you're going to green ally, you don't have to stick to the restrictive list of you must have at least 50% Harrod. You can take the Watchers of Kana and the Bracken Guard.
Yeah.
You can take different hero lists. You have the poisoned weapons on your Harrod Archers. Like, it takes away just as much as it gives, and it doesn't really have like a massive flavor change. Like, I could see a case of someone going, I kind of want poison weapons and the freedom to select the combination of units that I want, so I'll just run a Mummock outside of it. Like, I don't think it's completely unreasonable. I think most people, if they're taking Mummock, probably would run this, but that's why it's average for me. Obviously, if you two think it's above, though, we can adjust. So, Mary, you go as far as saying it's strong, or do you just think it's top of average?
I'm going to venture that it's at the bottom of strong, because you're right. Unfortunately, I think because it's got you must take a Mummock, it is just a flat upgrade. If you're going to take a Mummock, then you'll take this instead. It doesn't restrict you in any way beyond that, but I think having Harbinger on a Mummock is really cool. Mummocks are like quite hard to use properly, and it's a big points investment. So the fact you're getting that little buff is nice. I also quite like that it's easy to get in from a money point of view. All you really need is the Mummock.
The one thing I will say is like, let's say you're a new player. Whilst it's good value, do you want to be painting a Mummock as a new player?
Well, I mean, the fact it's good cost-wise, it's good for new players if they want to come in with this Legion, but it's also just good if you're an experienced player and you want to get into a new army and you're like, well, it incentivizes that.
Personally, I think a Mummock's quite intimidating to buy. I've never painted anything that big, and I personally, even now, would be intimidated to paint a Mummock. Mummock's almost in the region of kind of, you might even like to say that you want an airbrush, and then that's obviously like somebody, you need to be quite experienced to be investing.
I mean, you say that, but it's the cost of like a big 40k tank. Like, it's not that
I'm not
intimidating.
speaking cost. I think cost is fine. It's just it's massive.
Scale.
But I don't see that as a problem personally. I mean, it's mostly skin and fabric, and some wood. It's really not that hard.
It maybe not, but I think big models are intimidating to paint, especially if you want it to like look good.
It was really like ornate, then maybe. But I think, with the way YouTube is, you can find some good tutorials for some fabric and for some skin. I mean, it's basically a base coat and a dry brush, probably a wash.
Some people might disagree, but I mean, we're like assuming that like a dry brush is like, really straightforward, just throwing out there. I think people who just started painting aren't necessarily that confident. OT, you are a lot more recent in the painting game. How would you feel tackling a Mummock?
I mean, I wouldn't want to. I recently did Birder, which is the first like reasonably large model I've ever done, and like he's a little bit intricate because he's got lots of patches of different colors and things, so maybe it's not exactly the same. But yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think I personally wouldn't want to paint the Mummock. Like, I've got no interest in painting anything that big. But I mean, if somebody's really into it, I don't think it would necessarily have to be a huge barrier. You can have it like it's a big scale. Like, there's a lot to paint, so maybe that's sort of what you're getting at, like just the scale of it and the time you'd have to invest. But yeah, in terms of ranking, I think I'm if possible bang in the middle of you two. Like, I've said top of average. I just don't quite.
not quite special enough.
I feel nothing. Like it leaves me. It leaves me empty.
Just in general.
Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't do anything wrong, but it doesn't do anything that cool. So we need to leave space for cooler legions. So yeah, I'm putting it average.
Top of average, though.
Above Gothmogs.
Above Gothmogs. There we go.
Okay. Cool.
I think that's where we are all staying. And then Riders of Theoden. This one I think will probably be an interesting one to debate ranking. It should be fantastic, but I don't think I can give it because it's so expensive. It's because if we are trying to rank it based on kind of collecting, playing, painting, like everything about Legion.
Well, it's 50% more expensive.
It's so expensive. I mean, if you don't see the money side of an issue, then yeah, it's fantastic. It's just not. What do you think? What do you think?
For me, the money side of it, like, is obviously a gateway into it, but it's only 50% more, which it'll take you a bit longer to collect it, perhaps. But long term, I think it's quite a fulfilling all-rounder Legion that's good. It's fluffy. It's got quirks. It's got all the cool heroes. It's got the most epic moment in all of the Lord of the Rings. For me, the fact that it costs 50%-ish more than the average army, it isn't a big deal compared to those other things, and for me, doesn't bring it out of that top tier.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It's entirely how big a barrier you consider the cost thing. It's arguably one of the best legions in the game, I think, apart from the cost. Like, I think there are a couple which I personally prefer, but like, if you want, it comes back to that thing of like, if you wanted to recreate this scene, of course you would run this list. Like, you would be insane not to. And from that perspective, it does its job really well. But it just stands out from the others so starkly in terms of cost. And for me, it does just keep coming back to those Royal Guard. And like, I can't get past how expensive they are. I think the problem is it like, in terms of, I would never recommend this Legion to somebody without like going into how expensive it's going to be first, because what you don't want to do is get like really into the theme, really excited to make it, and then realize that you can't afford, like, you haven't budgeted to spend that amount on your Legion, when like you can build a perfectly good Legion at 650 points for like 80-90 quid. This one isn't good enough to cost 3 times more. Like, that's not right. So I think the cost moves it down at least into solid, possibly into average. But
I'm not going to go as far as average, because I think Mayor's right. Like, if you're willing to do like a slower collection, and you are going to be spending a little bit of money regularly on the hobby, picking up a hero, painting up, enjoying that, you will get value from it. I just think that, especially when we're sort of considering, like, as OT just made a good point, like saying like to somebody, oh, there's this really cool Legendary Legion, Rise of Theoden, that moment in the movie that's like your favourite moment in Return of the King, they get really excited, and then they look at the cost and they think, I could buy a £30 Fellowship of the Ring box and have really cool characters that you love for the whole movies, and that's as many points.
Yeah,
it's really difficult. I guess, yeah. Is it just solid then?
It feels so harsh. Like,
it does feel harsh, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know, but
so let's have a look. So in solid, we've currently got Range of Athenian, We've got Blackgate opens, and then our one fantastic is assaults on Helm's Deep. The weird thing is, isn't it, is from a purely rules perspective, placing this alongside Rangers and Blackgate is wrong.
Feels a bit rude.
But then we are meant to be looking at this kind of all together. It is missing something that I think the fantastic ones have.
Yeah.
They're gone. Last case for it being fantastic.
I mean, what would you do to if it's purely cost? Like, I feel like
I think that they've got to. What I'd like to see Games Workshop do, and let's be realistic, they're not just going to lower the cost. So let's just remove that as an option because they won't do it. You've got to incorporate in a list like this a way either of running it in a different way that is just as themey. Like, there's a lot of guys there. You could have an alternative way of doing this that doesn't rely on quite as many heroes and maybe has a bit more riders, and it will still be expensive, but not as much. Or you do something where you like maybe box up some of the metal miniatures into a bigger pack that you can buy at a little bit of a discount.
Yeah.
Just so that you can actually access stuff like this. I don't know.
Because the Royal Guard, the Royal Guard
problem. Straightforward fix like the other legions we looked at. Yeah.
Like the Royal Guards, they are such an upgrade on the Riders of Rohan in this Legion, in my opinion, for what you want to be using this Legion for. That, I mean, Riders of Rohan, I wrote it down, I think they come in at just over £4 a model. The Royal Guard are 3 times more. It doesn't make sense. And like the way you have to build this list, and the way it's most effective is putting the Royal Guard in, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good.
How much is it? How much is it without Royal Guards again?
Not that much cheaper. Like, I think if you skimped on like the more expensive heroes, as in like cost wise, you could maybe get it down to like 180, 170 quid for
how many points is that?
650. I couldn't find a way to get it less than like 110, 120 at 400 points. Like it just is expensive. Like there's no getting away from that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think really it's a case of, for an experienced hobbyist who knows what they're getting into, it's fantastic, and then for a new player, it's just solid. So I guess we've just got to decide then: are we going to put it at the bottom of fantastic or the top of solid?
I think for me, I'd rather it be top tier with a little asterisk next to it. Yeah, next to it being like proviso.
If you're a millionaire.
Yeah, if you're a millionaire, this is fine.
If you want to flex on everybody at all.
If your disposable income is over £1,000 a month, then this
is one for you.
So I'd rather it be that way around than having an asterisk on the tier below, being like, this is only here because it's a bit more expensive to build. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
So what are you two calling then? What's your final decision? Lock it in.
OT was saying that for him, price was dropping down as far as average, so I'm guessing that it's going to be top of solid for you.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't fulfill all the criteria of a fantastic list because it's by far the most expensive. Like, there's nothing even close to it. So, like, there are legions that will go in fantastic that do everything. This does almost everything apart from cost.
Yeah. Sorry, Mayor. The reason we created was the solid tier was for legions we liked that just missed out on one or two things, and I think this just happens to miss out on one thing. So top of solid, and I think we can say that nothing will be more above it. But yeah, I can't do it.
I mean, I'm trying to think what else would go in the top tier, but I guess we'll find out as we go. But from
I think other
things from my head,
things,
there's not a lot, but
other things will go.
OT thinks there are.
There are.
I'm sure.
I can think of a few. I can think of
nothing.
Or maybe even 5 or 6 actually that I would put in fantastic. So
okay.
There are lots of really good legions.
I think there are going to be a lot of solid. There's going to be a lot of solid.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
I don't think there are many like catastrophically bad ones. I think there's only a couple.
Yeah.
I think we're
no.
Yes. Right, so there we go. We have ranked them. So we've got Rise of Theoden top of solid, and we've got Iron in the South at the very top of average. And if you want to see the tier list as it forms, I don't know. I might start bothering to edit it into the YouTube videos as we go. Now that we've got a few on. But don't get your hopes up.
Expect nothing.
Yeah,
we're untrustworthy and we lie. Like,
don't raise your hopes and then you'll be disappointed. It will definitely go up on the blog though, and I'll put a link if you do want to, for some reason, look at an image of the tier list. But I'm sure someone will want to. Good. Right. Next episode then. Mayor's not going to be with us. Sad face.
R.I.P.
Not well.
He'll still be alive.
Just the way you said it was like a bit threatening. But yes, I'll be in Rome, so I probably won't dial in. I'll just have to let you two chat shit for an hour or so.
We want to point out that Mayor did actually offer to break from his lovely holiday in Rome
to supervise.
Well, I was told by you two that I should be enjoying my holiday and not
about fucking Middle Earth strategy battle game. We were like, I think you should actually concentrate on your holiday.
I don't know if it says as much about whether I like doing this podcast or how I'm expecting Rome to go, but
there we go. Possibly, I don't know.
Expectations.
Well, I mean, maybe we will have a surprise.
A guest appearance.
I'll pop in for 5 minutes. Yeah.
Surprise appearance from the Mayor. But because
lots of hand gestures.
Yeah, because that, we won't be talking about. We're going to be talking about something else. Me and OT are going to whip up something shit.
Yeah. It will technically be content.
I think it's either going to be like quite a high level chat where we do a load of boring research. Or it's just going to be the complete opposite, and we will record whilst having a drink and do some sort of shit posting. So, one of the two, it will be a complete fucking. Maybe we'll do both. Yeah. Maybe we'll do half serious chat, half nonsense. Yeah. But yes, we've really sold that. Yeah. We've really sold that. Join us for an hour and a bit of nonsense next week. Yeah, good. Yeah. Right. So it's goodbye from me.
Bye,
guys.